Hello. I'd like to welcome everybody for joining us today for the first of our 4 sessions in the New Jersey Advocates for Aging Well Housing series. I want to thank you for joining us, and the response to this really verifies the need not only for appropriate housing for older adults in New Jersey, but the need for information about the various options that are here for people. We've got 4 great speakers with us today. I want to thank them for joining us, but first I want to thank our sponsors for bringing this program to you. Our lead Raise the Roof sponsors, Parker Life and Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield. Our Build the Wall sponsors, which are AARP New Jersey and New Jersey Relay and Captel, and our Lay the Foundation sponsor, which is Spring Point. We have a great lineup today. And as we go through, this is a webinar format. So if you have questions, you can put them in the question and answer. That is easier for us to monitor than the chat. We will keep up with the chat as we go through. Recordings of this will be posted on our website and YouTube channel later, and all registrants will receive a link to those when the recording is complete. So I'd like to welcome our guests today. We have Christine Newman, who is the Director of Community Outreach and Volunteer Engagement for AARP New Jersey. Diane Vitillo, an occupational therapist and the president of Home Heartbeats. Steve Leone, who's the NJAAW board president and principal of Spiezle Architectural Group. And Jack Carman, who's the Director of Landscape Architecture, also at Spiezle. So we do have a lot to cover, and we're going to start with Christine today. I'm going to bring up your slides. Okay, Christine, take it away.
Great, thank you, Cathy. And if we could just back it up to the beginning of my section, everyone will get a little in reverse sneak peek there. Hi, everyone, and I hope everyone's having a great afternoon. As Cathy mentioned, I'm Christine Newman. I'm the Director of Community Outreach and Volunteer Engagement at AARP New Jersey. And I'm really pleased to be able to talk to you today about the AARP Home Fit Guide and accompanying resources. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And I want to start off just with a little bit of a dialogue. So I'll ask folks if you can use the chat function, not the Q&A, use the chat function for this. But I'd love to get your thoughts when you look at a picture like this, when you see this, what's the first thing that you think of? Like rapid fire, what comes to mind when you see this? All right, all caps, wow, oi, steps, daunting, yes, rocky, impossible, my friends couldn't do it, and out of breath, too much, yeah. Oh, groceries, very good point, Ellen. How are you getting groceries up that? Thank you all, shoveling snow, we can relate to that right now. I think we can all agree, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. I think we can all agree this doesn't feel very accessible, right? And most of us don't really give inaccessibility a thought sometimes, or when we see inaccessible spaces, we don't really give them a second thought until we're the ones personally unable to access the area. And I think, if we look at the way houses are designed today, they're really designed for young, able-bodied adults who maybe don't need assistance in any way getting around, and they're not really meant for perhaps older residents or folks with varying abilities. In fact, when we look at the housing stock across the country, most of our housing was built a generation ago, and it was really designed for those, what we considered like a traditional nuclear family, right? You've got at least, two adults and 2 kids in the home. But if you look at America, circa 2022, the majority of households are actually single adults living alone. That's the biggest chunk. That's 30% of housing in our country is single adults living alone. So you think about that, and then you think about the fact that in just 8 years, so a couple of years ago, I would kind of quote this fact, and I would say, oh, by 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be over the age of 65. And now I think about that, and I mean, that it's just in another 8 years, you know, so it's really something we're dealing with now and that we need to be addressing now. So we know that in another 8 years, 1 in 5 people is going to be 65 or older. And we know that older adults consistently say they want to stay in the homes that they're currently living in, that they currently call their home. So what we have here is we have a mismatch. We have the housing stock in this country that really doesn't reflect the rapidly changing needs and demographics of our population. If we can go to the next slide, please, Cathy. Thank you. So now I want everyone to take a look here, and just when you think about the word home, similarly, I just want to hear, what are the first things you think of? What comes to mind when you think of home or you hear that word? And I've got family. A lot of folks saying comfort, safety. Ooh, Thanksgiving dinner. Safe, comfortable, lots of a haven. Lots of people saying family and safety. It's warmth, familiarity. Yes, friends and community. Thank you all so much for sharing your thoughts on that. I mean, just imagine if we could make home, right? All those things that folks just said they think of when they think of home. If we could make homes suitable for residents of any age or any physical ability, and really allow older adults who want to live independently, maybe despite changes to their functionality or their evolving needs, allow them to do just that. And one way to make a home more livable for people of all ages is to incorporate very specific design principles and products that are adaptable, they're safe, they're easy to use. If we go to the next slide, please. And that's where AARP's Home Fit Guide comes in. This is really where we tried to develop this resource as a value add for folks. So the Home Fit Guide is a 36-page, fully illustrated guide, and it's about homes, not houses. Throughout the guide, you'll see that there's more than 100 different tips and suggestions that really go room by room, and the tips are very doable regardless of housing type. So whether it's, we're talking about a single family home, a house, an apartment, or ownership status, they can really be applied across the board, whether we're talking about renting or ownership. For the most part, there are some exceptions to some of the recommendations in the guide. So the guide was created to help people live safely and comfortably and really help them make their home a lifelong home. The guide is broken down into the sections you see here, the perks of staying in your home. So this is really about the perks of staying in your home versus other non-community-based supports and services, and sort of does a comparison on some of the monetary implications there. So talking about the cost to do some of these modifications in your home versus the cost of traditional care in a nursing home or an assisted living. Then the next section talks about universal design, which I'm just going to touch on because I know other colleagues on the panel are going to get a little more in depth on that piece. And then the guide really at the heart is a room by room tour that is just loaded with tips and suggestions for consumers on how to make your home fit. So this guide is available free. It's downloadable on our website, www.aarp.org/homefit. So you can either download a PDF or you can actually order a paper copy that will get sent to you. We also have this guide currently available in several languages. We have it in English, Spanish, Chinese, Korean, and Vietnamese. If we can go to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, I'm not going to dive too deeply into universal design other than to just say really at the heart of all of the suggestions and tips that are provided in the Home Fit Guide is this idea of what's called universal design as a principle. And what are we saying when we say universal design? Simply put, that means your approach to designing and building products environments is how do you make them accessible and usable to all people at all ability levels for their lifetime. So really that's the lens that the Home Fit Guide employs, talking about these different tips and suggestions. And then if we go to the next slide, please, Cathy. I just have a few examples I wanted to share so you get a sense for what the guide looks like. It does cover both indoor and outdoor spaces of a home. So all the way from, this isn't even the first one, exterior lighting and address numbers, all the way from basically street up to the door into the house. But just as an example here, some of the things that the guide covers is what are some really simple, low cost, no cost things you can do just to improve the exterior of your house. And the guide has a section that's called Quick Fixes, which pretty much summarizes all of the low cost, no cost recommendations throughout the guide. I have them starred here in green, so you can get a sense for that. So one of the things we talk about, for example, is, on the outside of your house, do you even have numbers that are large enough to be seen from the road? And then thinking about things like, what are they made out of? Are they really dark colored? If so, do you have any sort of reflective surface on them? So at night, they'd be easily identifiable from the road should emergency personnel need to get to the house. And again, that's a pretty low cost thing, but it's not something, I remember the first time I looked at the guide, this was a takeaway for me where I said, oh my gosh, I never even would have thought about that before. So a lot of these are simple, practical things that folks can, just get out the door and really start implementing. Another one you'll see here is the idea of having just some sort of a bench or resting place right outside the door in case you're coming in. Someone mentioned when they saw that picture of the stairs, what about your groceries? Same thing when you're trying to get in your door. How do you, handle bag of groceries, get the key in the door? So having some place where you can either sit down or you can place something that you're carrying while you open that door just for some additional safety. So that just gives you a flavor for some of the simple low cost, no cost recommendations. And then if we go to the next slide, I wanted to share an example from inside the house as well. So this is taken from the part of the guide that covers the kitchen and really focuses on appliances. And, for every place you see a red arrow here, there's subsequent recommendations about what's sort of a best practice or a good tip. So for example, you'll see here the microwave at counter height, as opposed to what most of us have, right, where it's right above your head. So you're pulling out something hot right at head level. Things like the garbage cans on a rollaway track, as well as on the sink having a lever faucet. So again, just going room by room with some very clear-cut practical suggestions. If we go to the next slide, please. Similarly to the bathroom, not only does the guide talk about, what are things like grab bars, assistance rails, but it also goes into how do you make sure they're being properly installed, because that is just as important as having these devices, is making sure they're installed in a way that is safe and functional. And then also goes into things like safety modifications. Again, I'm not going to go into too deep there because I know other folks on the panel are going to be covering that. If we go to the next slide, please. Great. So additionally, I wanted to mention a few complementary resources that AARP's developed that go hand in hand with the Home Fit Guide. The first is this AARP Home Fit video. And really, this is a visual room by room tour of a house. And so it takes you through a house and talks about all the tools and sort of tips and tricks that the Home Fit Guide recommends for that specific room. So it's a different way to present the material in terms of a video and a narration. And then the other resource I wanted to highlight here are the AARP Home Fit worksheets. So these, again, everything I'm talking about here, you can find at that same website. It's completely free to access, www.aarp.org/homefit. So these checklists are really helpful because they're printable and the consumer can actually take them and walk around their house and do a little bit of a home audit and get a sense of, okay, what's the current potential safety or functional concerns in the home? And then those checklists can really be used to help a consumer make informed decisions about what they may want to do in terms of modifications or changes. to make that home more livable. If we go to the next slide, please, Cathy. Thank you. There's an app for that. And there is an app for this. So the latest resource that AARP has been developing related to the HomeFit program is an app. It is a free HomeFit AR, augmented reality app. And currently, I just do like to preface this, it is currently only available for iPhone and iPad. Again, it's very new. But this app can be used to identify the improvements that help make a home comfortable, safe, and really a great fit. So what the app does is it uses image recognition to identify design elements and things like appliances. It can kind of pick up what's your refrigerator, where's the sink, where's the stairs. And then the app employs augmented reality technology to provide information with specific to-dos and suggestions. So it includes things like a checklist of do-it-yourself tasks, and then also those that are much better to leave to a professional that you hire and bring to the home. If we can go to the next, and I think last slide, Cathy, thank you. So then lastly, I did just want to highlight a few of the other resources that AARP has, as well as a few external to our organization. Our HomeFit information, I gave you the website for, and it's listed here as well. But all of this is housed on our broader website around our livability work, and that's aarp.org/livable. And I would be remiss if I did not mention another livable program that AARP offers, and it's our AARP Challenge Grant, and it just opened last week. So I want to make sure I give folks an opportunity to visit aarp.org/livable to learn more about the grant program. You can also see the application there. And this really is a national grant that funds quick action projects in communities designed to spark long-term change. And again, all of that, it just launched the end of last week, so you can learn about all of that on our website. The other areas I just wanted to flag, and I have them listed here as resources external to AARP are, and I think Diane will talk a little bit about this, OTs and CAPS. So CAPS are Certified Aging in Place Specialists. Really great professionals you can also work with that have a lot of helpful resources and information. These professionals understand various needs that really do accompany aging, and they can help you find very targeted and specific solutions. So I've listed a few additional resources here that folks can feel free to tap into. And with that, I'm going to stop. And Cathy, am I turning it back over to you?
Yes, I will take it back. Thank you. And we will post all those links and resources on our website. And there were a couple of questions about, would this be available later? We will be sending an email link to the recording and post that on our website as well. So we have a question right now. Someone is asking, do you help people pay for things like chairlifts? And I don't think AARP does that themselves. I think Diane, you might be able to answer where people could find, if you know places to finance it. So I'm going to turn this over to Diane now. So as Christine, thank you for taking us through what we can basically do ourselves in the home, the first step. And Diane's going to take us basically up to the next level of difficulty, right? For things that you probably can't do alone and that you would need help with.
Okay, I'll just try to quickly answer the question about the stair lift. If the client that's requesting it is maybe a veteran, you can call the Veterans Association. They sometimes offer grants for home modification equipment. You can also call the Department of Aging to see if they can give you some other resources on where you can look for grants for home mod equipment. So, okay, so I am Diane Vitillo. I am an occupational therapist. I'm a certified aging in place specialist, certified living in place professional. Well, you can see all that on my webpage there. So I do have specific training in home modifications. And my presentation will focus on how an occupational therapist assesses your home based on your functional needs, your mobility needs, your cognitive needs. So we are the unique professional because we have the medical background, but we work alongside people from AARP, our colleagues, the architects, the contractors, realtors. We all work as a team. Home modification is really a team effort. Next slide, please. So as an occupational therapist, when we come in to do your home modification assessment, we are going to look at all these abilities that you have and how these abilities impact your function in your home. So your strength may not be as good as it was 20 years ago. You may have some balance issues, perhaps due to maybe chronic or acute illness. You may have range of motion issues, so you can't reach into the upper cabinets of your kitchen, or you can't bend down to get the crock pot out of the base kitchen cabinet. You may have some visual problems, maybe macular degeneration or cataracts, so it's more difficult for you to find things. Maybe your countertop in the kitchen is black, but then you laid your black coffee cup down and now you can't find it. Your mobility might have changed, so you may not be able to get around the home as easily as you could before. So who are you going to call for help? Okay, it's a little Ghostbusters there, but next slide, please. So you'll call an occupational therapist who is a certified aging in place professional. There are also physical therapists out there who are CAPS certified. And the nice thing about having a medical professional is we're trained in aging across the lifespan. So regardless of the abilities or disabilities or chronic or acute illnesses that you have, we have some background in it and can give you some information on how you can modify your home based on the ability challenges that you're having. So we assess your home environment, but more importantly, we assess how you function within that environment. So with the first slide, we may see how you step in and out of a shower or a tub, the dressing, do you need to sit down to dress? Your toileting or hygiene needs, your mobility needs. Can you climb stairs? Are you using any adaptive equipment? Next slide, please. So we'll get started with the presentation. Your front door connects you to the world. Next slide. Next slide, Kath. Oh, there you go. But how easy is it for you to get to your front door? Christine, I love the slide that you had with all the stairs going up. I have visited 2 of these homes. I won't tell you which 2, but that's the first thing I look at when, as a CAPS person and an OT. When I come into the home, I park my car at the curb and then I assess the whole exterior. So I see if the client or the resident, how are they going to approach the home? So these are all the things that we take into consideration as we pull up to the home. Next slide, please. So we start outside and I look at your accessible pathways. How easy is it for you to approach your front door or your garage door, however you're getting into your home? Do you have handrails on your steps? Do you have a 0 threshold door entry? Meaning when you open your front door, can you just walk right in, or do you have a step or maybe a few steps? And as Christine said, keep a bench at your front door. You can put your groceries there. When FedEx or Prime comes, they can drop your package there so you don't have to bend down to the floor to pick it up. Your doorbell, do you perhaps have a smart doorbell, which would be great because then you can see who's coming to visit you. You can monitor that. And again, with what Christine said, is your house clearly labeled? I've gone to several home mod appointments and I tell you, I have to ride around the block several times because some of the places I visit are very rural communities. So the mailboxes are grouped together, maybe 10 in a row, and the houses are not numbered. So it's so important to have your house numbered or a mailbox right by your house that's numbered. God forbid you need emergency services, they need to be able to find you quickly. As far as the mailbox location, how far is it from your front door or from where you have to walk to retrieve the mail? And that pathway to the mailbox, what if it's snowing or icy or it's on a steep slope? So keep all of those things in mind. And for residents who maybe aren't able to get out to retrieve their mail, in South Brunswick, actually in any community, if you call your post office, you can ask for a front door delivery and they'll deliver to your front door. Again, outdoor lighting, very, very important because you want to make sure your pathways are well lit. Next slide, please.
Diane,
So-
before you go on, I just want to ask, we had a couple
Yeah.
of chats and a question about coverage for an occupational therapist assessment. Is that covered by Medicare or private insurance? Do you know?
Okay, it's a very vague guideline. If the
Okay.
home modification is being done due to an acute or chronic illness, it may be covered by Medicare. If the home modification is done as a preemptive, let's get it done before we need it, it is not a Medicare covered expense.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Okay. So now that you're up to your front door, do you have a door knob? Do you have a thumb latch? Or do you have a lever handle? And the reason it's important that I look at that is if one of my clients has arthritic fingers or hands, how are they going to grasp a knob and turn it? Or how are they going to use the thumb latch and push down on the latch to open? So lever handles, as you'll see in the home fit guide, as well as a lot of other information, well, you'll see along the way here, lever handles on just about everything is the most ideal type of hardware. And consider putting a smart lock or a key lock box on your front door. I don't know if you are familiar with like an August smart lock or the lock boxes. People, I think, are familiar with the lock boxes. Realtors have them. So a key is always available. Again, in case your neighbor needs to get in, if there's a problem. I know in South Brunswick Township, if there's a client living at home by themselves that has some issues, you can leave a key in the lockbox. You can notify the Blue Angels of the South Brunswick Police Department. And if they ever need to get into the home, they can use the lockbox. Next slide, please. And again, Christine, we're talking about the outdoor lighting and security, the motion sensor lighting, the dawn to dusk lighting. I actually just found out about this about a month ago. The lights will automatically go on when the sun goes down. But the nice thing about them, if they detect motion during the night, they'll stay on all night, but if they detect motion, they'll automatically get brighter, perhaps to scare your intruder away, and they'll stay brighter for, I guess, a few minutes, and then they fade back down to the lighter brightness, and then at dawn they'll go off. So available Home Depot, Lowe's, and they're rather inexpensive. Solar path lighting is great. Voice activated lighting, I actually have that in my home, and I'll talk about that in another slide. The Philips Hue light bulbs, those are voice activated lights, come in very handy for people that, let's say your bedroom light switch, you have to walk maybe 20 feet into your bedroom before you can get to the light switch. But now when you enter or when you approach your bedroom door, this is what I do. I just say, Alexa, turn on bed light, and it will automatically turn the lights on. Now my Alexa here is talking back to me. I usually call her Mary so she doesn't respond while I'm doing these presentations. And video security, Ring doorbells, they're great to have. Arlo cameras, also great to have, especially nowadays when there's so much theft and vandalism in a lot of our communities. Next slide, please. Okay, so now I'm inside your home. I'm going to assess the foyer and your entryway. If it looks like the top slide, I'm going to turn around and leave. No, not really, but I will give you a little encouragement to tidy up and maybe organize a little bit better. I'm always looking for throw rugs. If you have any, you should really get rid of them, or at the very least use carpet tape or some type of the non-slip surface. especially if you're using a mobility aid, you could easily catch the mobility aid and trip. And is there adequate lighting? Are your doorways and hallways wide enough, especially if you're using a walker or a wheelchair? If you are using a wheelchair, the appropriate turning radius for a wheelchair is 5 feet. So you really want to have a lot of room. And are the types of floors that you have in your home, check the door thresholds. A lot of the thresholds that I see in the home are not T thresholds. In other words, they don't have a smooth edge to them. They don't have a beveled edge. Especially in the bathroom, there's a lot of marble thresholds that don't have a beveled edge. And if you are using a walker, you could easily trip as you're going into the bathroom. Next slide, please. So for your interior doorways, pocket or barn doors are very useful to have. I actually, when my dad, who was wheelchair bound when he was living with us for a while, I took the we had a guest bathroom that he used, and the bathroom was very small. The door would swing into the bathroom. He was in a wheelchair, so he would have to pull himself all the way into the bathroom and turn a certain way to close the door and get to the sink, so on and so forth. So the point is, if you can easily change the door style to make it more accessible using a mobility aid, you should consider doing that. The picture on the bottom left is grate grips. It's a type of material that easily slips over a door knob, so you can easily turn the knob just using a finger, not having to use a pinch grasp. Center picture, the doorway assist handles. Some people maybe have one step from their garage into the hallway, but they just need a little bit extra help getting in. You could use the doorway assist handles, or of course you could put a grab bar, a vertical grab bar on that doorway. And the swing clear or the swing away door hinges, if you have a doorway that's just a little bit too narrow for the mobility device that you're using, consider putting on a swing away door hinge. You could gain 2 to 3 inches of width, because that door will swing all the way back. Next slide, please. Door thresholds. I live in a 55 and over community, and most of our homes have a one-step threshold to get into the front door. It's about 4 or 5 inches high. And some of our neighbors use the threshold that's on the far left. It's a hard rubber, easily attaches, doesn't attach, it slides right up to the door threshold. So the residents that have to use walkers or a cane, or just they have some mobility issues, can easily access the home. And then you have the thresholds that can lay across perhaps a patio door, and the ones that will lay across the threshold of a shower. The nice thing about these thresholds is they're light enough, easy enough to transport. Let's say if you're going to a hotel or taking a vacation, just bring them with you. Next slide, please. So going into the kitchen, I mean, this is a really nice kitchen on the left side, but what I do when I go into a kitchen, I assess if it's an eat-in kitchen. I'm going to assess the chair height. I'd like to see chairs that are at least 18 inches high, and captain's chairs that have the armrests on them, so a client can easily rise from the chair. Any chairs with casters, especially I see most desk chairs have casters. I generally tell my clients not to use a caster chair, because in the event, because this has happened to me, when I go to sit down, I lose my balance a little bit. It hits the chair falls out from behind me, or moves away from behind me, and I end up on the floor. So there are products that you can buy. They're called, I just went out of my head. I think it's a caster stop that you put under the caster so the chair can't slide. I look at floor space to make sure that if there is an island, like in this picture, that if the client is using a mobility aid, they can easily transverse the kitchen without bumping into anything. I look at door swing on appliances with, some people wouldn't consider that, but I worked in an assisted living facility as an OT for many years. And if you see the refrigerator, the door on the right, all right, so let's say a client is using a walker and she opens the door swings out to the right. All right, so now she has to move her walker all the way to the other side of the door, retrieve the item, let's say it's milk, and then she has to close the door to walk back to put it on a countertop. So I always assess the door swings on all the appliances in the kitchen. Faucets I take a look at, again, lever handle faucets are the easiest, the ones that I recommend the most because they're easiest to use one-handedly. You could, use a finger to turn, to push it up. You don't have to have that grip or the strength or the pinch to turn a knob. And now with the sensor faucet controls, so easy to turn the faucet on and off. And actually, you can ask Alexa, just give me 3 ounces of water in my measuring cup, and some of the sensor faucets can do that as well. Lighting is very important, good task lighting and overhead lighting. So for clients that do have any visual issues, the space will be well lit. And storage. I did have one client that was in a wheelchair, and she did like to do a lot of cooking. She had difficulty reaching the dishes in her overhead cabinets. So we recommended the pull down cabinet shelving. Another client liked to do cooking, but was having difficulty filling the pot for the pasta and then having to walk it over to the stove. So those type of faucets are excellent for people that have some strength or mobility issues. The cabinets, the base cabinets on the bottom for that corner cabinet that maybe you can't reach all those pots that you have pushed over in the corner. This is a great shelving system. When you open the door, the shelves in the back will automatically be pulled forward. And the cabinet space, the pull-out cabinets on the side. All of these products that we're talking about, you could either, you can email me and I can tell you where they're from. A lot of them are Revishelf, some of them are Richelieu products, but they're all available. Next slide, please. Okay, 80% of the falls in the home occur in the bathroom. I'm sure you've all heard that before. So how can you decrease your risk of falls in the bathroom? Next slide, please. So in the bathroom, roll under vanity tops are so important, especially if you are using a wheelchair or if you just need to put a chair there to sit while you're performing your hygiene tasks. A comfort height toilet. That's a toilet that's going to be at least 18 inches high to make it easier for you to sit and rise. A 0 or low threshold shower. Again, that makes it easier for you to step in or roll in. Linear drains are becoming popular in bathroom renovations. They help keep the water from flowing out on the bathroom floor, and it makes it an easier transition to get into the shower. And of course, continue to use the non-slip bath strips or mats to decrease your fall risk. Next slide, please. And Christine, again, the Home Fit has all the grab bars. So the nice thing about some of the grab bars today, they're non-institutional looking like they used to be. People didn't want to put up grab bars because it made their bathroom look like a hospital. But the styles have really come a long way, and they're just actually, they're great looking in your bathroom. Putting in a handheld shower head, especially for clients that may need some assistance with showering, or if you need to sit while you're showering. And install vertical grab bars. If you're stepping into your tub, put a vertical grab bar so you have something to hold on to, and then the horizontal grab bar along the long wall, so you have, again, something to steady yourself if you need it. And there's special, you can see this special toilet seat, because that appears to be a lower toilet. So all of these things, Google, they're all online. Next slide, please. Tub transfer bench. I used a lot of these when I worked in subacute rehab, especially for clients who have had hip surgery, stroke, any, I guess, medical issue that precludes them from safely stepping over a high surface. The commode on the right, placed over the toilet, you can raise that as high as you need to make sitting and rising safer and more comfortable. The picture on bottom left, you could have a beautiful bath seat professionally installed if you felt the need. And a bidet can facilitate completing hygiene tasks independently. If you are considering putting in a bidet, talk to your contractor, make sure some of the bidets, many of the bidets require an outlet by the bidet to plug in. Next slide, please. So this is one of the most important things that I look at when I go into a home, especially when it's a multi-level home. So having a bedroom and bath on the first floor, it's the most strongly associated with aging in place. And I've seen it a lot, again, working in the rehab profession for over 25 years. If a client or if a patient had, let's say, recovering from cardiac issues or stroke or a lot of issues that will make it more difficult for them to climb stairs to their bedroom when they get home, and their bathroom. You know, if you have the luxury in your homes now of making space to put a bedroom down there, absolutely do so. And also, if you do not have a bathroom on the first floor, consider doing that as well. Next slide, please. So in the bedroom, these are some products that might facilitate you getting around in the bedroom. The bed rail on the top left just gives you something to hold on to as you transitioning from sit to stand. Adjustable beds for clients that maybe have difficulty laying in a totally flat position and then having to get up by themselves to swing over to sit at the side of the bed. Bottom left are the furniture risers. You can get them at Bed Bath & Beyond, any place. You can put them underneath your bed to make your bed a little bit higher if you need to, or if your bed is too high, you can cut the, in some cases, I shouldn't say all, some of the beds you're able to cut the feet off the bed to lower the bed if that's where your issue is. And if you have reach issues where you can't reach the clothes in your upper closet, your closet rod, consider using a pull down rod. Next slide, please. Laundry room. So I briefly talked about if you had a bathroom on the first floor, but your laundry is down in the basement and now you're having difficulty navigating the stairs, see if there's a way that you could modify your bathroom to incorporate a stacked washer dryer, or now they have the combo dry. It's a washer dryer all in one. Next slide, please. Stairs, big issue. Next slide, please. So with stairways, I always measure the height of a handrail. You want to have a handrail at least on one side of the steps, preferably you want a bilateral on both sides. And lighting, you want the stairs to be well lit so you can easily find your way. There's many ways to light your stairs. You can get stick-on remote lighting. You could stick it any place you want. You can put lighting underneath your handrail. You can also, the next slide, we're not ready for it yet, but in the next slide, I'm going to show you how I use Alexa to turn my lights on the stairway. But you can change the step rise and tread to different colors. So perceptually, you'll see a difference where the steps are. And if you are considering getting a stair glide, you're going to need to put an outlet at the base of the stairs. Next slide, please. So this is my home. My staircase. So I have one staircase coming up to my office. That's where I'm broadcasting from now. And I do have some visual issues. In the evening, my stairs, which are, you can see they're wood. When I look down my staircase, if I don't have the light on, it just looks like a brown slide. I cannot discriminate between each step. So I went to Home Depot and I got reflective tape and I put it on every step. So visually, that's a cue for me that I can see where I'm stepping. And then you see at the base of the stairs, the piece of tape in the center of the step, a visual cue for me, that's my last step. Okay. Then if you look on the right at the top of my staircase, I have the ceiling light. And I have a Philips Hue light bulb in there. So when I get up from my desk, I have to walk approximately 30 feet to get to the top of my staircase. And rather than trying to find my way to the light switch, I ask Alexa to turn on the step light, and she'll automatically turn the light on for me. And then when I get down the steps, I'll say, Alexa, turn off the step light, and she shuts it off. So smart technology, which is beyond what we're able to speak about today, but smart technology, I discuss it a lot when I go into the home because there's so many uses for it in the home. Next slide, please. So does your garage look something like that on the top? Because you may have to rearrange it to look like the bottom slide. I hope that never happens, but again, you know, it gives us the opportunity to plan ahead while we're well and we can take care of the situation. Organization is going to save you a lot of time in the end game. Next slide, please. For clients that have visual impairment, again, with the steps, I recommend a visual contrast using reflective tape, any type of tape where you can visually see the difference in the steps and the bottom step. The dryer, the picture of the clothes dryer, I used, this was one of my clients' homes. She was unable to turn the dial to make it set at 60 minutes. So we set up the bump dots so she could feel when the two dots were together, she knew that that was the right setting for her. And then using larger fonts to label products, your spices, there's probably a gazillion things that you could use larger fonts or larger handwriting labels to identify products. Next slide, please. Okay, we'll just briefly go over a few products to maximize safety and mobility. The product on the left, you can slip it under a chair or a sofa. It just gives you something to push off from, especially if your sofa or chair is very soft and you kind of sink into it. The slide on the right, that's I actually have this in my home. I used it for my dad. The tabletop totally swings away 360 degrees. So when he wants to get up from the chair, he just slides the desk part away, and then he can use both hands to hold that black handle to pull himself up. It's a great product. The chairs bottom left, I think you're all familiar with those. And the product on the right, we would recommended this a lot when I worked in rehab, especially for the clients that have had hip replacement. They have to sit at a certain angle when they go home. You put a 4-inch high cushion on a chair or sofa just to make it a little bit higher. So next slide, please. I just saw a note about the hearing. Yes, I certainly agree that, yes, you're right. I do not have any slides on hearing, but I do discuss that in the homes of the clients that I visit that do have hearing issues. Outdoor space and landscaping. I think Steve and Jack are really going to get into this much more, but just so you know, as an occupational therapist, I will go in, I could go to your backyard or your front yard or wherever you enjoy your hobbies, and I make sure that your mobility, your visual perception, everything is good for you when you're in your yard enjoying life. Next slide, please. And just one more thing, these accessory dwelling units, I know Jack and Steve are probably going to talk about these too, but I think these are the cutest little things. So let's say, for example, you're going to need some assistance. You maybe, your kids are saying, oh, come live with us, but no, you don't want to move in with your family. See if there's a way, maybe you could build this little ADU unit on their property. So you're still close by to them, but you have your own little space to run away from everybody and enjoy your life. So next slide, please. So in summary, when considering home mods, think about function for everybody, regardless of their abilities. Adaptable, make sure whatever you're doing to your home could be adaptable for anybody else that comes into the home, and make sure it's comfortable for everybody for a lifetime of living. Next slide. And thank you for listening. So if you have any questions, I guess you can either, bring them up on the screen or email me. Whatever you think there, Cathy. I don't know.
Sorry, we actually do have several questions for Diane. So Diane, I made you co-host. If you could address the Q&A questions, and then at the end we can get into them, because I think some of them will go into a lot of detail. So if you can address the Q&A that are centered on this.
Okay.
And we're going to move to Steve to take to the next level of difficulty.
Okay.
The renovation. And we will get back to more questions about for Diane after Steve.
All
and
right,
Jack.
I'll type answers while I'm listening to Steve.
Okay.
Okay.
That's good. Okay. All right, Steve, now I just have to find your slide. Sorry, just give me a minute to bring this up. Steve, if you want to start talking, I will try to catch up to you as soon as I can.
Sure, not a problem. Thank you so much. Thank you, Diane and Christine. Great presentations. There is a lot of crossover among the presentations, and I don't know, Cathy, if our presentation is going to dive into things that are more difficult or more detailed, but more so, I think the takeaway, what we wanted to bring forward was more focused on a psychology that comes along with aging, whether you are we'll call it the recipient of these measures, or even someone planning for these measures on someone else's behalf. So I'm Steve Leone. As Cathy introduced me earlier, I'm the current board chair for NJAAW, and on behalf of the board, I thank you all for attending. This is a great turnout. Thank you very much. Hopefully, I see some great dialogue on the sidebar, and hopefully you've got some great takeaways. Jack will take us outdoors at the latter part of our segment here and talk a little bit about, again, that's more of the psychology of outdoors and what that brings to all of us really as individuals. In my day job, I am an architect. I'm a principal with Spiezle Architectural Group, and I spend most of my time working with senior environments, but more specifically with organizations that provide housing and various degrees of care, whether it be independent living, assisted living, or long-term care. And if you can go to the next slide, Cathy. And, the things that we learn are pretty deep in working in the market sector. But one thing is for sure, that no one really wants to leave their home. So that has actually spawned, I think, a pretty sizable market for in-home care, from some of which are sponsored by those very organizations that provide those lush and all-inclusive campuses for some of us to go to, should we choose. But generally speaking, most of us like our homes. We don't want to leave our homes. There's a lot of anxiety that comes along with having to commit to moving to a similar facility. Next slide, please. So the focus is on making our homes right, and I chose the word right very specifically, in that there are guidelines, as both Christine and Diane referenced, and they're great. They're excellent tools. And as an architect, I have to live with the ADA, right? The ADA accessible guidelines. But all of that is highly technical. We talked a little bit about, or there was mention earlier about universal design, and there are 7 principles of universal design, and they're all valuable, and it's great to put things into categories, but we tend to do that as a race, right? We want to catalog things, we want to name things, we want to put things in neat little buckets so we can reference them. But at the end of the day, what I find is when I'm speaking to individuals in their homes or in their work settings, they want to know that I understand all of the technical aspects and the codes, but they really want a basic conversation. We want to talk about how to make things right, more so than having to spew off a whole regimen and slew of code regulations and requirements. So I think we want to keep this as an understanding or a conversation, at least our part, on the psychology of what these improvements bring and why they're needed, whether you are, again, the recipient or whether you're someone planning for. Next slide, please. And I can tell you, as someone who in recent time was a caregiver, my wife and I cared for my mom who lived with us. It runs a wide range of emotional challenges. And there are things that can be done that are easier to do, things that take greater difficulty and greater cost. And I can see some of the dialogue in the side chat bar. Yes, some of these things are quite costly, but some of them aren't so much so. And at the end of the day, the thing that we really have to understand is that we have to provide for environments that offer variety and choice. Just as we take for granted in our daily lives, those of us that don't have any afflictions, the simple little things that we do, whether it's just to grab a glass of water out of the fridge, or just in our daily aspect of living and getting to and from work and the things that we do. We also have to account for the fact that there oftentimes are those caregivers or that extended family unit. And so it really isn't only a singular perspective that we ought to provide. These images are showing folks that are restricted to wheelchairs. That isn't the only restriction. Obviously, you all know that. There are folks that don't need a wheelchair but need a walker. There are folks that have vision problems and issues with hearing, as was referenced earlier. So we have to take a broader look, and we have to take a broader look that also includes those caregivers. So the image the 2 of the images on this slide here are showing that there are other folks that are involved in the caregiving. There are other folks that are involved in, let's not qualify it as caregiving, but in a daily life, in a daily routine. And the more we can normalize those things, the less obtrusive they become, the less undignified the person who is being accommodated feels. And I can tell you that and as an experiment several years back, I placed myself in one of the facilities that we had just recently designed and restricted myself with being in a wheelchair and assuming certain elements that might be typical of an 85-year-old version of me. And one of the things I can tell you right out of the box is that sitting in that wheelchair took quite a bit of my dignity away from me at my first instinct. Now, that's not to say that they aren't obviously needed or things that you can cope with, But in the environments that we can create and make them assimilate as best we can in being natural settings, it's that perspective, that psychology that we ought to approach this with, to normalize the situation so that the wheelchair doesn't become the object of our visual connection or the object of the conversation. We have to try and work hard at pulling that away. And that's what I think our focus has been as we work with clients to bring better and better products online. And we've made a great deal of progress, although there's still much to be done. But I think we're heading in the right direction from the product choices that we have that again, Christine and Diane alluded to earlier that we might see, to the actual choices that we make at younger ages. I know that a great deal of the conversation that we have about who our constituents are, Cathy and myself and our board, is that it's not only the folks that are in need, but it's the folks that, again, are the caregivers, the folks that have to plan out what to do on behalf of their loved ones. Next slide, Cathy. So as Diane alluded to in the previous section, we have made great progress, and there's certainly some things that we've done over the years that are less fortunate, but because we didn't know better, we had to get ourselves from point A to point B. We tried some things, some with better intention and some with others. So some things just simply did not work, as referenced by that photograph with I don't even know how that ramp would work, to be quite honest with you. I don't know how it would work for anybody ambulatory or not. And so clearly the handrails and the guide bars have to come across so that people don't actually use it and hurt themselves. But, you know, the feeling of adding all of these devices and creating what might be more of a healthcare visual is what I think we've now been able to do better and get away from because of some of the choices that come forward. And it's all because of a lot of the great work that some of you all do, that all of us that are focused on bettering the lives of folks, all of us as we age forward. But even in the acute healthcare sector, all of those environments are trending more towards more residential design and hospitality design. So no longer is even a hospital, for that matter, let alone a long-term care facility, focused on just the healthcare aspects and being safe, but the focus is on elevating a person's demeanor, elevating their perspective on what it is that they're doing in that particular environment, so that it doesn't feel like they're there strictly for healthcare. Okay. So this is more and more what the environments can look like and do look like, and this is where we aim to focus. Environments where, you know, the upgrade to your home is viewed as an upgrade that would enhance the quality of the home, even the resale value, if you want to take it to that extent, so that it can accommodate the needs and still appear to be, you know, no different than the most current contemporary home that you might find flipping through any magazine. Now, yes, there are costs involved in doing this work, but as an example, you know, these things can be done when you're ready to retrofit a bathroom or a kitchen, for that matter, because you're at that point in time that those rooms just require upgrade, and you just want to upgrade them, but you don't, because you might not have either someone present or yourself requiring any of those needs. You might not be focused on that view. So the point here is, as much as we don't necessarily think about aging or think about our circumstances and what our condition might be as we age, it's not very difficult to really think it through a little bit further with the help of some of the folks that are on this presentation, or you all in the audience, to take a little bit of a further step, a little more detailed step, to suggest that any one of these bathrooms would serve better than, let's say, a standard bathroom might to assist in a better quality of aging. So why not take a renovation project to this degree, even though you may not need it at this point in time? Next, Kath. And some of the subtle things too are things to be more focused on. Everything from allowing enough counter height with open space beneath it. Again, if you're restricted to a wheelchair or a walker, but the details are important to note too. So while the photo on the upper left looks like it would be very accommodating, some of the things that we learn, again, in more detailed through practice and tried and true measures might suggest that those corners on those elevated cabinets, while the cabinets being elevated allow the footrests and your feet in a wheelchair to circulate underneath them, those corners are pretty sharp and they're perfect for gouging shins. So things to consider are dive into a deeper level of detail. And I think the resources that are available today, whether it's working with any of those of us that are on this presentation and any of the other resources that have already been pointed out, I think are important. It's always helpful to get more input, and in large part, really that's what our organization hopes to do, is to make people find those links and make those resources available to them. Subtle things like thresholds. Diane made reference to some of those points before, but I can tell you that in that experiment where I restricted myself into a wheelchair, which was several years back now, so in my early 50s, trying to cross a threshold in the bathroom that I just designed, from a bedroom to a bathroom, fully compliant with the ADA regulations, which allows a maximum of 1/2 inch elevation on the threshold, was difficult for me to negotiate. And again, early 50s, perfectly physically fit, and not with really any real restrictions or ailments. Those were all created just for the event or for the experiment, but they were fictitious. I came to the realization that you really shouldn't have any thresholds. But then what happens in a space where you go either from exterior to interior, as you have in the photograph on the lower right, or from a bedroom to a bathroom, both of which might have concerns about moisture and water transitioning from one space to the next. There are ways around that as well. The point here is just to keep a focus on detail, and again, utilizing the resources that you have available to you, that you help understand what those are. And you can go on to the next slide, Kathy. I want to give Jack an opportunity to take us all outside, because outside is always better than inside. And the one bedroom down. And you can just click one more time, Kath. Should animate. There you go. So, this is a layout of a home that would be a rather nice home, rather large home. The point here being that there are choices that we can make earlier on that maybe we don't want to face. So in a scenario where maybe there's a couple with young children, anywhere between say 35 and 45, buying a new home, ability to own a home that might be this gracious, would the conversation even go as far as thinking of needing a one bedroom down? Every single national home builder has a one bedroom down. They all do, because of the need that's been recognized over the last decade or more. I can tell you that we have a couple that just friends that just purchased a house, and they purposely did so with a one bedroom down. They're younger than we are by a few years, perfectly able-bodied, active, working, but they purposely viewed it as the upstairs bedrooms being for their children when they visit. So it's a difficult proposition. It's a difficult conversation. This goes back to what I kind of opened with, and that is there's a psychology involved, but normalizing aging is, I think, an aspect that interests me most, and that I try to work with most. that is not the easiest thing to make come to bring to fruition and manifest itself. But I think we hopefully all of us are working hard at normalizing that situation and making it more accommodating. So, Jack, take us outside.
Thank you, Steve. And we've all had conversation, and as a way of backing up here or taking a step back, I'm a landscape architect, and I've specialized over the past several years in the design of therapeutic gardens in senior communities, healthcare settings, schools, and so forth. So take a very serious look at, we take nature for granted. We assume that it's there and we just walk out our door and everything is fine. But there's a lot of research that goes into the benefits of nature and why we should stay connected with it. So our conversation today has been about the home, and we've touched on certain aspects of the outdoor environment, and I'm going to take you there and go into a little bit more detail. So Cathy, if you want to take us to the next slide, that'd be great. So I mentioned the research, and there's a lot of evidence of why nature is good for us now, especially in the past couple years. You read about how people are home, working at home more, but also spending more time outside. And there are real serious positive benefits to maintaining our connection with nature. Less stress. Being outside, taking a walk just in our yard, in the neighborhood, helps to reduce stress, lower anxiety, lessen anxiety, lower heart rate. Studies have been done that views of nature, being outside, connected, gardening, again, taking walks, something as simple as that helps alleviate depression, improving sleep. It goes on and on and on. Cathy, if you want to jump to the next slide. People like Roger Ulrich. He's an environmental psychologist. At this time, when he was doing his study, he was at the University of Delaware and did a study at a hospital in Paoli, Pennsylvania. And I mention this not to get down too much detail, but he looked at people recovering from gallbladder surgery and patients in hospitals who had something as simple as a view of trees, had spent less time in the hospital, might have been released a day earlier, had taken less severe pain medication, and had fewer complications. That translates to all of us, not just in a hospital, not just in a school or an office setting, but in our home. And even just that connection of being able to, Steve has spent time, and Diane and everyone talking about being able to get outside, making it easier to get inside your home, but also get outside your home, has benefits for us all. Cathy, if you want to go to the next slide too. So what are some of those positive benefits? Why? So it's one thing for me to say that nature is good for you, but again, to articulate why. We are social beings. We are social creatures. We like to stay connected. Again, especially during these past 2 years or so, you hear stories of people feeling isolated, can't get out to see their friends. We are social beings. Being able to get outside in a safe environment like our yard is so important for us. It improves our mental health. Physical exercise, just one of the best things we can do to maintain good physical health is to go for a walk. You don't have to jog. You don't have to lift weights. Something as simple as walking around our yard, our neighborhood, having a Fitbit if you want to, some type of device to track makes it more of a challenge for us. But just staying active, finding things to do in the outdoor environment, and I'll talk about those. But that's purposeful engagement. We are attuned to the outdoor environment. We are attracted to a beautiful sunset, the smell of ozone when it's about to rain, the sound of birds and wind chimes, the smell of plants blooming, in the spring and the summer and the fall. One of it is, again, keeps us connected. I like to talk about circadian rhythms, and people don't always cue into that as much, but that's the natural wake sleep cycle of the body. And so pretty soon there's going to be a time change again for the spring, and we're thrown off by an hour. Well, one of the fastest ways to reset your circadian rhythms is to go out in sunlight. It's just the easiest way. You don't need supplements. You don't need to just go take a walk, and you also start to get your daily dose of vitamin D by doing that. We hear a lot about mindfulness and being outside, and I've talked a lot about physical health. So when I say to you that nature's good for you, there's a lot to back it up. And this list, I had to cut this list down. So there's many, many more benefits to it. So Cathy, if you want to jump to the next one, we'll start to talk about a little bit more in detail. So what are some of those elements that make our home, Steve said before, saleable? It goes to the value of our property and so forth. And maybe we do that for some reasons, but we also do it because we just want to enjoy where we live. And being able to continue to get outside is so important. As we age, it takes us longer for our eyes to adjust to the outside light. So if it's too bright, it's like coming out of the movie theater in the middle of the day. It's too bright for you. And the glare. So shade, having an awning over a doorway or an umbrella over a table makes it more comfortable to sit there. And the furniture itself should be comfortable. And I'll start to show you examples of those. The number one element that people ask for in their garden is water. And so it's the sound of water in the background that's calming. It doesn't have to be a big running brook or something. It's just the sound, like that little bird bath there, so the trickling sound that's so calming and so restful. Making it easy to grow vegetables, raise planters, having plants that are safe in the yard so someone doesn't hurt themselves. Bringing nature into the garden. How can we use plants to attract nature into our yard? Sensory plants, if you like to cook, think about herbs and think about having them maybe in raised planters or near a doorway that just make it easier to garden. Vegetables, we've talked a lot about no steps. We don't need to go there, but you know the importance of that. And have just smooth, level walking paths. So let's look at some of the pictures next. And talk about some of these more in a little more detail. So in that garden setting, having comfortable furniture, again, umbrellas over tables, a grill close by the door, by the house, so it's easy to get out and cook dinner and barbecue. Having a lush setting with a lot of plants. If you're into gardening or having friends come over and help you, again, socialization, it's that connection and sharing of interests and so forth. Cathy, next slide. Water, I mentioned that. And there's so many things that you can get in some of the garden centers, big box stores that are relatively inexpensive, easy to assemble, easy to install, that offer that background noise, that offer this background sound that's so calming, that trickling sound of nature, of water in the garden setting. Next slide. Planters, there's a variety. You can either build them yourself or have someone construct them for you. There are kits available. The top left is actually from the Chicago Botanic Garden. It's their enabling garden. I know I've specified ones like the top right that are mobile, that could move around depending on how much sun you have and where in the garden is best to place it. Also, planters like the lower left that are wheelchair accessible. Kind of large, but if you've got the real estate, the space to do it, it gives you a greater opportunity to do more planting. The two bottom are actually at the Duke Estates that we worked on a project there, building a large accessible garden for a lot of their gardeners. Next slide. Maybe a greenhouse. Maybe it's something added onto the back of your house. Maybe it's something that's freestanding. This is actually my brother's greenhouse that he built about 2 years ago. And it's actually a great place that maybe you have some plants in there. Maybe it's just got a comfortable chair. And on days like today, when the ground is covered with white, that's a real comfortable place. And if you can't get around your yard easily, this is a great place to sit with a book and a cup of tea or something and just be immersed in nature in a plant-filled space. Next slide. Or maybe it's something that's added on. These pictures are actually at the Chicago Botanic Garden. So maybe it's an addition to your house. Maybe it's some type of frame or something that fits over the window, or a room where, even if it's just a room that's got south-facing light, where you can put a table. So it doesn't have to be that fancy, but something where you can grow some plants and tend to some things. Again, it's maintaining that connection with nature even during the winter. Next slide. And what does our landscape look like? What does our yard look like during the winter time? So we want to design it for four-season interest. So things like red twig dogwood, the plant on the left, just pop in the wintertime, especially if there's snow on the ground. Things that you'll start to see early in the spring. Somebody has identified or called forsythia the harbinger of spring because it's one of the first things to bloom. Or you can take cuttings from forsythia, bring them inside in warm water, and force them to bloom a little bit earlier. Little things, but fun things we can do, again, maintaining our connection to nature and planting those plants that will attract butterflies, in this case, into the garden. So butterfly bush, or plants like echinacea, the bottom right, something that people take as an herbal supplement, but it's something also that butterflies and birds like to eat the seeds from. So if you're sitting at your window looking out in your garden, you've got something to watch, or maybe you're on the patio. So again, think of where you place the garden, where the plants are relative to whether it's going to be on a patio, a deck, or maybe something you want to see from inside your home. Next slide. Gardening is America's #1 hobby. Bird watching is America's #2 hobby. So having birds close by, bird feeders close by, I should say, by your window, plants that attract them. Actually, the slide in the center bottom looks out at my office, from my office window. That's what I'm looking at right now when I look out the window. So even, and that was taken just a couple of days ago with all the snow, but you can see the cardinal on the one feeder on the right-hand side. Certain types of feeders will attract certain types of birds. So something like a thistle feeder, the feeder on the bottom right, will attract house finch. So you can be very specific about the type of birds you want to attract in your garden. Next slide. And then other things too, we've talked about inside the house and things that make it comfortable and make it more interesting, and whether you're in the kitchen or the dining room or wherever it is. Things outside, it's the same way. We talked about the garden being sensory, wind chimes, bird feeders that are fun and whimsical, rain gauges, so you can tell how much. These become conversations too, and again, help us stay connected. Or one of my favorites is the tree that's on the right is at Longwood Gardens, and it's decorated for birds in the wintertime. So there's all kinds of different seeds and things that birds will eat. Again, you can take that evergreen in your yard and take it and make it not something that's just good for the birds too, but a conversation, something to watch, something that's fun. Next slide. And then a couple other ideas of, things that hobbies we talked about, having plants on windowsills, bonsai, if it's a hobby. Maybe you've got a topiary in your yard. I don't know. Maybe you want to take something that you're not crazy about and turn it into a topiary. Or maybe just a bench that's comfortable that you might want to just sit and read the newspaper, a book, and fall asleep on. I don't know if that bench is that comfortable, but I was walking through the Chicago Botanic Garden and I took a picture of someone who was just taking a nap, just having a good time. Next slide. And then other things too. How do we make that our yard a little bit more of a connection to our neighborhood. So I know you've seen the little libraries that people have in front of their house or home. If you want to find a way to stay connected to your neighbors, this is a great way to do it. Some people that are hobbyists that might enjoy trains, the large gauge LGB trains, like the one on the right. If you've got grandkids or other kids in the neighborhood, you're going to be very popular. Or maybe a part of your yard is designed as a meditation garden. So a place that's restful and peaceful that you can escape to. Next slide. And that's it. So I want to thank everybody, as all our speakers do, and appreciate your time. And I know we ran out a little bit, but hopefully all the information we presented has been useful. And I know there's been plenty of questions coming up. But Cathy, thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk about this and hopefully give everyone new ideas about what you can do so that you can stay in your home forever or close to forever.
Yeah, no, thank you. These were all great. And I know there were a lot of questions in the chat and in the Q&A. Diane, I don't know how many you got to answer, but I do want to, well, first I want to say that all of you presented things that I either use now or have. Even a lot of the assistive devices that Diane talked about, I've used when I've been on crutches or someone else in the house has been on crutches. You know, there's so much that we can do at every level to stay at home.